Yeah, sure. I mean, there's been much worse in the sport, but I had what we call a rotational fall at the World Cup. Oh gosh, way back in May 2011, when I was in the frame for London at that point, and essentially 1,200 pounds. I went down 2 meters below the horse in the water, and then on my hands and knees, and 1,200 pounds landed squarely on me. So I woke up from a coma 4 days later with all sorts of injuries and breaks and dislocations, and yeah, took me 18 months to get back, and 6 months to get back on the horse, but another 12 months to get my head back in the game. I do love, Chad, that you're in the high performance space, man. You're working with some of the best athletes in the world, and by comparison, my horses are normally at that level, really, compared to me as a human specimen. But 8 days in, I'm really excited about the what I feel in my body, and it's holistic. It's like it's systemic, really.
Yeah, I wouldn't. Well, that's crazy that you had. Sorry you had to go through that. That's pretty traumatic in multiple facets. But yeah, I think a lot of the traumas from serious injuries like that, like there's pain memory feedback loops in the nervous system and all kinds of things that modern science and medicine either hasn't explored well or just doesn't understand. And I
Mm.
think a lot of those lingering kind of pathways and those kind of things are prime targets for carnosine to kind of help clean things up and bring in some fresh satellite cells and help with
Yeah.
the nervous system, myelin sheath, and all those things that are, really important to recovery. And very clearly, humans don't do the best job of, or we wouldn't have platelet-rich plasma and stem cell therapies, right? Because the
Yeah.
healing process was incomplete, and we need to start it over again and then accelerate it to the point where we can, overcome some of these lingering residual, feedback loops or tissue damage or bone,
Mm.
whatever it is, pick any of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would be excited to see how well that could bring you back to, pre 2011 accident physiologically.
And Chad, Joe said probably to, because I'm only day nine today. He said if I should probably load for a month for every decade of my life, which will be nearly six months. Am I expecting to see that scale up over 6 months?
Depending on how much you use it. So
Three.
what
I'm painting it from my toes to my hairline 3 times a day, man.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean, what we expect to see is we refer to the scientific literature. We can see that longitudinally up past a year and a half, there's still carnosine accumulation in tissue with oral
Mm.
supplementation, which is terrible compared to what we're doing. So, you would expect to see a continued rise in tissue saturation with carnosine with that level of use. Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic, because the white tissue has been the biggest thing for me. Buffering lactates as a rider is beneficial. Don't get me wrong, especially in lower limbs. But white tissue, the thing with all the breaks, the thing that gave me the most trouble and still is a little bit lingering. I handled it mostly with a lot of prolotherapy. Is a hip dislocation. And
Mm.
so roll back, and then the chains that would trigger all the way down my leg and up into really almost into my shoulder, and treating it with every modality known to man. I even came, because you guys are in America, I came over to a guy called Dr. Fingers. I read about him in Dave Asprey's first book. I can't remember his name, but he's there in Utah treating all the elite skiers and stuff. I spent $4,000 in a week and really didn't get an improvement. So I can notice a difference around my hip and lower back in 8 days, and that's making me really excited about the possibilities for my equine athletes. So, do you want to just give me a, because we know it's gosh, describe it for me, Chad, will you? Velocity, the equine product. How would you describe it if I was trying to tell somebody, you need to put this on this horse? Apart from the lactate, buffering is very important for my sport because we gallop over 6,000 meters at a long format. But I'm looking at like the lower limb management, soft tissue, mostly white tissue, tendons, ligaments, joint capsules.
So I think the same way you would describe the human version, you talk about all the properties of carnosine. So very powerful anti-inflammatory, It's very good at dealing with advanced glycation end products from carbohydrate metabolism, which the horses will have to deal with because they're anaerobic.
Mm.
And then you get kind of all the other things that can happen in that space, the calming down the hyperexcitability of the nerves, being able to kind of quelch all the metal ions and heavies that are going to be in there from the post training, post competition inflammation. And you can refer to our muscle biopsy study where we well evidenced
Mm.
all
Yeah, I
things,
read that.
including eye data, right? So,
Yeah.
we've shown what can happen. We're well aware of the amount of inflammation that's created when the horses train and compete. It's 2 to 3 fold what a human would see,
Mm.
and we're able to kind of mitigate that entire process within 24 hours. And there's nothing in existence that can do that. Not even pharmaceutical drugs, anabolic steroids, none of that can elicit that level of response and recovery in humans or equine. So I think that it's unmatched properties in those areas, and the fact that there's nothing in existence that can traverse into that space, because how are you proposing to get any kind of pharmacology into joint capsule or tissue that has zero blood flow? That if someone can explain to me that, I'd be willing to listen, but you're not going to. Physiology isn't going to change. So having something that can traverse through all those different cell types, which carnosine is well known to do, gives you an advantage in trying to mitigate those processes, because you have something that not only can penetrate that space without blood flow, but then also has all the anti-inflammatory, anti-glycation end products, and what it can do with hyperexcitability and neurotoxicity with the nervous system. Nothing can do all three anyway. So you'd have to have 5, 6, 10 different pharmaceutical drugs. Then you'd have to directly inject them, like you're saying, with prolotherapy or PRP into that joint capsule or tissue, connective tissue, or collagen, whatever. Pick any kind of therapy that you want, type 3 collagen, whatever. It doesn't make a difference. So, and all those other things that are available to you guys now take months to see an improvement. And how is that going to happen? The horse doesn't have time to take time off and do
Yeah.
nothing for, right? So it's a perfect way to mitigate all of that on the fly in real time in about an hour, and then having all these different properties that can work in benefit for the animal. Not and I would also say that, obviously in things like, Kentucky Derby and some of the races where we've had horses dominate, it's not going to be as apparent it is as it is in the sport that you're in. And I would expect a horse that has the advantage of velocity to be able to obliterate records in that sport, obliterate personal bests and all that, because it's tailor made to deal with the fatigue induced decreases in performance. And nothing in the horse world can do that now. Nothing. Because it's all designed for anaerobic sprinting, and they're all
Mm.
illegal drugs anyways, right? So that's why guys like Bob Baffert and all those guys line up for Lactigo, because they know that they're going to be able to get the advantages on in performance. That's been proven as multiple race winners. Some of the second and third longest odds in Kentucky Derby history are our horses that have won. And we have also placed 1 through 5. I mean, you put it on a horse, they're going to go and do that.
Mm.
So if you can put it on a horse that's going to be working in more of an endurance capacity, oh my God. Like I would look forward to seeing what a talented animal could do, because they should absolutely obliterate what's possible with the product. So I wouldn't even undersell the performance piece, because my God, if you can get that onto the right animals, I mean, it's not even, whoever's not using it will not even be able to compete, period.
Sure.
Like that's not an opinion. That's not opine. That's science and what we know that has been proven for decades with the carnosine research. So yeah, I mean, I think that I would take that approach right there. Excuse me a second, I'm gonna plug in my computer here.
And Chad, while you're doing that, one of the things that just occurred to me, because I was reading in the human stuff about neurological benefits and stuff. So would it have some sort of calming effect? Because the horses get very, very fit. I
Yeah.
mean, essentially, we have to gallop over 6,000 meters over mixed terrain and ditches, banks.
You're talking
So,
like kidney sweats, that kind of thing?
pardon?
Are you talking like when the horses get a lot of anxiety prior to competition?
Yeah, because they have to be fit to gallop 6,000 meters on the second day. On the first day, we've got to do like ballroom dancing in an arena, you know. So you've got this hyper fit athlete that then has to be calm and display relaxation in the dressage arena. So would there be, like, that's just occurred to me now, would there be some benefits to their state of mind if they're loaded on the product?
Oh yeah, 100%. Like all of our all those Kentucky Derby horses, that's one of the reasons they use it is to avoid the kidney sweats, right? And
Mm.
that's what you're essentially describing is going to happen to the animal in an anticipation of what's to come. So whether it be the anxiety that comes with that or the desire to have more of a calming effect over the nervous system, that's
Mm.
exactly what it's going to help do. So that is probably, I think, the number one feedback that we get from the horses that race at that level is that, you know, they that is why they want it, to be honest. That's what we hear is for the kidney sweats. It's, I mean, the
Wow.
performance is great, but like honestly, they never talk about that. The feedback we get is, man, this stuff has gotten get rid of the kidney sweats for our horses. And so I mean, I can't even tell you the number of times I heard that. I live in San Diego, so it's the equine hub in the United States for sure. I mean, with the number of stables that are here and some of the high performing horses, in terms of the total volume, San Diego is a hub.
Mm.
And so, yeah, I hear that feedback quite a bit.
Sure, that's interesting. And of course, the racehorses are much more, you know, we're always trying to manage the horse staying out of their sympathetic nervous system as much as we can. And there's all sorts of environmental factors that drive them in there and make that dressage phase really difficult. So, as I can understand it, Chad, the life of the product in the body is about 6 hours. Like before it clear, what's the
It
clearance time on
really
it?
varies quite a bit by tissue space. I mean, if you were to look at the primary literature, they only often refer to plasma, which can be a few minutes. It's actually can be up to several hours. There's a massive inter-individual difference in clearance rate
Mm.
plasma-wise. But I would say the overall, if you were to combine overall, the clearance half-life on the product is right around 4 hours.
Right, cool, okay. And I think I heard somewhere they won't let them apply it at the track, but you could certainly get it on the animal before it got to the track.
I am aware of zero regulations that say you cannot apply it at the track. Yeah, that's not a thing. As long as it's
Okay.
compliant within the performance enhancement uh drug list protocols, there's not and there's no rules that I'm aware of that say that you can't. But to your point, let's just say that logistically it wasn't something you could do. As long as it could be applied as close to being that we leave for the track as possible. And if the animal's not going to go out and perform in between then and when they compete, you're fine.
Okay, super. And Chad, I'm guessing you've gone down the FEI path because if you've got McLean Ward as a poster boy, you must have addressed that already. Well, it's the same as you guys with athletes with clean sport.
Yeah, I mean we're not a banned product. There's nothing in our product that's banned, so it's a non-issue completely. I mean it's just a topical amino acid. That's it, a topical dipeptide, and so it's a non-issue. There's no regulatory framework that we would even need to address.
Super. Well, Chad, I think as I get into the space a little bit more and am applying it to my own animals, I'll start to get some more questions. But they're the main things I really needed to get my head around. Is there any other information you think would be of interest to people that I'll be talking to?
I think, the kidney sweat feedback we continuously get from elite level racehorses that's one of the main benefits. The performance piece you can very easily speak to. The primary literature on carnosine and buffering is well known. I would also say its anti-inflammatory properties are probably would be the most important one because that not only helps from the day-to-day training which will elevate the competition when there's less damage to recover from on a daily basis. They're going to train
Mm,
and compete at a higher level, but also the improvement of quality of life for the animal, which nobody ever talks about. I do because I'm well aware of the kind of life racehorses live, and how
Mm.
traumatic they die, and their quality of life is not good at all. I mean, I don't care
Yeah.
what anybody says. I know what they go through. And so this really improves the quality of life and longevity for the animal, because if we're reducing that impact of performance every single day over time, we're going to be adding, you know, days, years to the life of the animal, which to me should be something that's important to everyone. And so for the crowd that wants to hear that, I think stressing the importance of quality of life just due to the sheer reduction in impact from their day-to-day training alone will have,
Mm.
and the reduction in inflammation and all the things that we saw in our biopsy study with the thoroughbreds. So I think those kind of latter two are really what I would hang my hat on, but obviously you could tailor the message to whatever the crowd is. But yeah, kidney sweats, obvious performance improvements, the reduction in inflammation, and improvement in quality of life. Those are, I think, the four kind of main talking points that I would say are either well evidenced in the scientific literature, or we have tons and tons and tons of anecdotal feedback from, some of the most reliable and elite race teams and individual horses to ever exist.
Yeah. And then Chad, if I apply it, what's the peak effectiveness? Like, is it 4 hours in, or and then if
It's
I'm
90
loading
minutes.
them, I don't.
90 minutes is when it peaks in
9 minutes.
saturation. Between 60 and 90 minutes after application is when carnosine peaks in the tissue. So that's when we've got the most amount from that bolus dose that you applied into the tissue itself. And that's going to be everywhere, the muscle tissue, connective tissue, and bone. It's going to go into all of those places within 60 to 90 minutes in max saturation. So that's your time frame. Um, Anything beyond that, you would apply it independent of training or competition. That's where you're going to see the long-term increase in the tissue itself. So if you're only applying it before they train and after they train and before they compete and after they compete, it's utilized for those processes. You're not going to improve the saturation in the tissue over time doing that. It would require additional application. So that's
Mm.
kind of, like with athletes, with my athletes, so Usain Bolt, Brittany Reese, all those guys, I have them put it on before bed and when they wake up. And then they also apply it before training and after training. And they perform, those are to perform different things to support the training and recovery and to support the long-term tissue saturation over time. That's what the at night and in the morning is. And so I think budget is sometimes a concern. And so maybe that we don't always have the opportunity to do the latter, apply morning and in at night, which is okay as long as we're able to use it for training and competition. That's the primary goal anyways. But that's how you would approach that scenario in terms of wanting to give the horse benefits longitudinally over time versus the acute application for performance and recovery.
Super. And then just to finish up, then what sort of timeline are we looking at, both for human and equine athletes, to maximise? Like, if I'm loading up, we talked about maybe 5 to 6 months for me at nearly 60. What would you say? Because a lot of the eventing athletes at the top of the sport are, we would almost consider seniors. They're between 10 and 16. How long would I have to bathe in that horse in it before I'd be expecting to see the best results? Not with the competition so much, but with the systemic management of the body.
I think systemic management of the body, you would see the benefits right away, but it would require continued use.
Sure.
So I think that, longitudinally over time, we have not seen the upper limit to what can be stored in the muscle, but that's kind of separate from the potential of systemic mitigation of inflammation and all those other things. That's kind of a separate discussion, and you get those benefits right away, but only as you're using.
Yeah.
So, I think that the applying around training and competition and post training and competition would address that. So if
Right.
you're getting it on the horse after they train or after they compete, that's going to serve as the role to mitigate the inflammation, to help with the joint recovery, to help with calming down the nervous system between events or between days. That's going to do that. That's the post recovery application, which only requires one application. Anything else outside of that is going to be for the longitudinal storage of it in the muscle itself, which is purely performance related. And if budget's a concern, we don't necessarily have to do that as long as you're applying it before competition because you're going to get
Mm.
those benefits there. And certainly, if we increased how much was available, potentially we have more buffering than we would otherwise. But we don't really know what that shows up as in competition. Does that
Right.
mean you'll finish point 0.5 faster? Maybe, maybe
Mm.
not. We don't really know the answers to that, and eventually we'll figure it out, possibly, because that's kind of hard to statistically analyze in a research study because you'd have a horses or multiple people going against their own, output, which can vary drastically on temperature, time of day, and all these other things that science has a hard time controlling through regression analysis. So that might be a difficult one to answer, but certainly that post window of training and competition application will address those major concerns that we would have day to day for the horse.
Cool. And I know you're talking about price point. I got to tell you, as somebody who spent a lot of money on my own and my horse's bodies, I find your price point really good because we use we inject a lot of biologicals into joints to manage the older horses. I hate, of course, cortisone. We do use long-acting cortisone in the spine if we have troubles, but yeah, you have a good price point from my perspective with the money I've spent on, and I can apply it every day. I don't need the vet, to prep a joint and then just even the risk of breaching that joint capsule. So
Yes,
yeah.
it's much more cost effective than anything that's available, and it's not evasive, to your point
Mm.
about having to inject into the joint space, and that requires skill from the person doing it, right? And I mean, there's always things that can go wrong there, and even increase the pain for the horse and not address it. Yeah, so certainly you can avoid all those things, and definitely it's cost effective for sure in comparison, especially in the horse world where money gets thrown around like it grows on trees, so. But certainly I'd like to be considerate of that in discussion because if
Mm.
there is those constraints, then we want to make sure that we're advising on, hey, you can still get many of these benefits, if not all of them, if you're smart in how it's applied and the way that we use it. So
Yeah, super. Well, guys, Chad especially, I really appreciate your time today. I hope I get to catch up with you at some point.